celebrating 1 year of the Instagram Insider Hacks podcast. Can you believe it? To help me celebrate, I've invited my audio engineer and virtual assistant to join me today. We're going to review the top 5 episodes of the podcast as they surprise me because I don't know the results. And stay tuned to the end as we wrap up this episode with a big red bow for a special announcement. Oh, and the people I mentioned, they're my son and daughter. It's a family celebration. And now, listen in. Hey there, it's Ruthie from RuthieGray.mom, and welcome to Instagram Insider Hacks. So easy, your mom can do it. This is the podcast that teaches you how to authentically deliver your message in a non-pushy way. If you want to receive engagement and investment on your Insta time, listen in. And now, here's your host, me, Ruthie Gray. So, like I said, today we are celebrating a year. A year flies by much faster than you realize. And before we get started, I just want to introduce my son and daughter to you. My son is my audio engineer, and his name is Nolan Gray. Welcome, Nolan.
Hi, Mother.
Why don't you tell the folks what your business is in the name?
Sure, yeah. My business is called Indigo Sound, and I do audio engineering. I do sound engineering for musicians as well as podcasters like you, and sound design for film work. Basically anything that needs any sort of sound engineering. And I also edit this podcast that I'm talking on right now, which is going to be interesting listening back.
Yes, and you do such a great job. People ask me all the time, how do you edit your sound? Why does it sound so good? Well, it's because my son takes all of my gulps and the weed eaters in the background and just mouth noises and everything, and he makes them disappear. So, yeah.
To the best of my abilities.
Yeah, and my lovely assistant, Haley Carpenter, is with us today. Welcome, Haley.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Why don't you tell the folks what you do?
Sure. So my position is basically I'm a virtual assistant to Ruthie, aka Mom, and I handle all of the visuals for the Facebook page and also some of the Instagram visuals, Pinterest graphics, and I also help with the scheduling and just keeping you, I support you.
Keeping her on track.
Yes. And helping me with my membership and just keeping everyone straight, telling them what days they have for feedback or hot seats. It's more than one Facebook group that you run, several, and just there are any number of things in a day that Haley will do for me. It's just up-leveled my business since having her on, and as well as Nolan with the podcast and everything. It's just totally made a difference. And since we're celebrating today, we're going to start with Nolan and Haley taking turns, starting with the lowest to the top, most downloaded podcast episode of 2020 and 2021.
Woohoo!
Woohoo. Let's go.
All right.
Do you want to start?
I'll start with number 5. The 5th top episode was episode 8, how to use hashtags on Instagram. A question and answer that you had some special guests like Pat Finner, your friend Dawn, and you talked about narrowing your IG niche.
Yeah, I think what we did, we talked about a couple of things. And so that was the most downloaded, well, not the most, but the fifth, number 5. And, probably the reason is everybody is wondering what in the world to do with hashtags. And it's like this big mystery that the world wants to know. So I gave some super basic but important tips that still are relevant today at the time of this podcast taping, which is late May, early June. So, yeah.
So the hashtag niching part of this episode, I actually went back and listened to this episode like 2 weeks ago, just because I've been trying to get on my game with Indigo Sound and our Instagram, and basically just like, okay, what are all the quick tips and how do I make these hashtags effective? And that was obviously the number one thing was like, I wouldn't do hashtag music because it would have billions and I would just get lost in a sea of hashtags at that point. And so I just niched them down and it's already even doing like Knoxville music matters because that's where I live is Knoxville. Even that has connected me to other musicians in the area here. And we just met online now because of those Instagram hashtags. So that was a really cool episode.
That is awesome. And, I think that people are discouraged because hashtags are kind of all over the map, but they're still working. And so, for that, I love that. I love hearing that. Thanks for sharing that. Well, what are we looking at for number 4 then?
All right. So the number 4 most downloaded podcast of yours was episode 5, actually. Another early one. And that was a Q&A. It was tips for optimal Instagram post prep. That one featured Sarah Rolandini, Michelle Bowman, Belinda Letchford, and a few other ladies. And you shared 3 tips to cut your posting time in half.
That was a super valuable one. And I shared some of my, kind of ninja tips that I use for posting and how to do that. That makes it just easy because people need easy when it comes to post prep. It's really easy to get overwhelmed with all of the things. Well, am I going to do a reel, IGTV live, or am I going to do a carousel, or what should I do this week? And how do I decide? And, what images to use and what hashtags and all of that. So I just kind of broke it down. And those people that you just named, Nolan, they were early supporters of the podcast. They were some of my first supporters. And the people that Haley, you mentioned are some of the people in my memberships. And so if you are interested in that 4th most downloaded episode, head to episode 5 to find the 3 post prepping tips. All right. So who's next? What's number 3?
Okay. The 3rd most popular episode is episode 6, the most effective way to build your Instagram following. In this episode, you talked about why slow growth is good and necessary. Engaged followers are the best kind of followers. And you just talked a lot about organic and slow growth.
Yes. And I still believe that. I think it's good to grow. I think you do need to grow, and there are several targeted ways to do that. But I also think that it's important to make sure that we're serving our current audience and serving them well. So that takes time. And I think in that episode, I encouraged people to kind of veer off from the fast track, the loops and follow for follows and things like that. That's not authentic. And that's not where we want to go. At least it's not for me. And most of my followers, I find they're authentic, and they want to establish authentic relationships. They're not just on Instagram to sell. Although, yes, we want to market our products, our books, our podcasts, but we also want to deliver value because the majority of listeners are Christian businesswomen who are there is a bigger picture, at work. So yeah, that's not a surprise to me at all, that episode.
Okay, the second most downloaded episode in Instagram Insider Hacks short history is episode 33, which aired back in March. And that was about 7 ways to grow followers in 2021. So that was a very popular episode. And you talked about how you don't need to fill up your Instagram with fake followers. And you shared about delivering value instead of adding to all the noise. And just about finding your voice and sharing it in the way that only you can share your message. That's what that episode was all about.
Yes. And I remember we actually had a growth challenge where I opened up my Authentic Instagram Engagement Facebook group for people to join. And we had a huge influx of people, which, by the way, that Facebook group is free and anyone can join. You just have to request to join. And so people were really involved in that. And I did a training in there, and that certain episode was from that training. And again, it's a lot like number 3, a lot in the same vein as far as how to build. And people are always wanting to know 2 main things people want to know is for Instagram. Number 1, how to grow your platform. And number 2, how to use hashtags. So I can see why those are popular. The twist, the difference between that one and the number 3 downloaded podcast, one of them is that I did capitalize at the end on how important it is to put your own personality spin on your platform, your Instagram account, and not just do what everyone else is doing. Find your voice, do your thing. Break out in song or whatever you do, like I do on the podcast all the time. And I get comments all the time from followers and cohorts that say, I love that you just randomly break out in song. It's a good thing you have a good voice. And I'm like, no, that is not a good voice. That's just the voice my kids have heard me do ever since they were born. Right, guys?
Very true.
That's your crazy voice.
That's true.
Yes, that is my crazy voice.
That voice comes out in the pool.
Let's go for number 1.
All right.
Let's do number 1, Haley.
Okay, drum roll, please.
The number 1 most downloaded podcast. Episode 4. How changing my Instagram strategy delivered clients without sales pressure.
Yay. That one has been super popular this whole time. And I believe my guest was
Kathy
Ladansky. Kathy Ladansky is a Rodan and Fields representative, and she has been with me for at least 2 years in and out of my memberships. And she's in my current membership now. And Kathy, she listens to Sound Counsel and she does whatever I tell her. And she said, whenever I'm in your memberships, it works and I make sales. And the thing about it is too, though, that Kathy is currently experiencing a pivot. And a lot of times for me at least, it's just really good to get sound advice and input when you try to rebrand yourself and you're trying to launch a new product and things like that. So the whole mantra of that, the title, delivering value, that's how you make the sales on Instagram.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked about in that episode too, which I thought was interesting, was focusing on the individuals and not the numbers is when you will start to see the real breakthroughs and connection and sales.
It's true. It's true because, again, like I said, the number 1 thing that people want to do is grow their following. They want to grow their followers. And so they pay attention to those numbers. And something interesting that one of my recent podcast guests pointed out, Susie Goodwin, I think it was episode 38. She grew. She has over 10,000 followers. I think it's 12 or 13. But she said once she hit that 10,000 mark, people had a different perception of her, like she didn't see them anymore. that she's all about the numbers, and she's not like that. And none of us ever authentically, I don't think if you're an authentic person that is wanting to deliver value, you're ever going to, get to that level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Okay. So that was number one.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to me that the early episodes are the most downloaded, and yet they're the ones that have been on the longest too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make sense. And it's kind of cool to see that there was such a recent one that was just the second most popular. That one just came out in March.
Yeah. And like I said, I did a challenge. So let this be a lesson to anyone out there trying to grow your Instagram, trying to grow your podcast, trying to grow your book. If you do a challenge on Instagram, it will help boost those numbers. So let's take from that and springboard. So here's an announcement. Going forward, we are changing a little bit. We're doing a little bit of the pivot ourselves for the Instagram Insider Hacks podcast. And we are broadening our message a little bit. It's going to be geared more towards online marketing of all kinds. We're talking newsletters, SEO, the different ways of developing products, online products, and things of that nature. So stay tuned, because we will be using the same channel, but we're going to rebrand, and the name reveal will be coming up soon, and a new cover and a new announcer, Nolan, and a new song and everything. So for those of you who don't know, Nolan did my first song. And he does all my songs. And so my theme song. So if you need a podcast theme, there you go. So, and something else that Nolan is doing now are voiceovers. So if you need a voice guy or anything like that, if you need a theme song, follow Indigo Sound on Instagram. I share his stuff all the time. You've probably seen it, or just give me a message and I'll hook you up. So, Haley, Nolan, any last words?
Just that this was so fun. I think that we should do more podcasts, the three of us.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was fun.
Woo! What an honor.
Thank you for joining us for this celebration. And we'll see you next time on the Instagram Insider Hacks podcast.